Hi, today I'm going to share with you the beaded keychain and wristlet tutorial. So here are my supplies. I'll just kind of walk you through. I do have two different sizes of the wristlet I'm going to show you. I'm going to make the smaller beaded one, but this is a 15-inch on the right and 15 millimeter beads on the right and 12 millimeter beads on the left. So you can see the different sizes between the two. I do have pretty small hands and wrists, so I would say this is like a small medium sized. All right, so you'll need, this is 12 millimeter beads. You could also use the 15 millimeters. So here you see the 15 compared to the 12. I do like the 15 for my keychains, and I kind of do both for the wristlets. It just kind of depends how many you want. You can also use as many beads as you want as well. This is a 20 millimeter wooden bead. I leave them unpainted. I like them in that color, and then this is like a geometric type bead, but you could use a decorative bead as well. Then a tassel. This is kind of like a medium length, and then for my keychains I use a small one. So these are the keychains. I use the 4 silicone beads and then 1 wooden bead as my center, and then the tassel. Then you'll need a keyring and lobster clasp. And then I use a beaded needle. This is not needed, but I find it much easier to get the string through the beads with it. I use a I use cording, so it's not, I'm going to say bungee. It doesn't have elastic in it, so I do use a cording versus an elastic. Again, the lobster clasp and the key ring. And then this is a jump ring. I use this for the longer tassel to put on the wristlet. So I do use one of those to attach the tassel for the wristlets. I do use a craft glue. I use the Barely Art, but you can really use anything. I do like the fine tip on the end. A syringe type glue would work too. That way you can push the ends into the bead, and I'll show you that. And then pliers for that jump ring. A scissors, because you need to cut your string. And then I do use this bead tray. It is optional. I just find it keeps the beads very tidy. All right, so let's go to the beaded keychain tutorial. So I'm going to make this beaded keychain. I like to use the 15 millimeter silicone beads on this. I just like how big they are. For my length, I kind of go a double of how long it's going to be. I'm going to show you. I'm using much more string than needed on this. I kind of showed double the length, but it just makes it easier to pull it taut and then tie it once you get to that part. I do waste a lot of string sometimes, but you will get to an area where you understand how much you need. So I just thread it through the lobster clip end, and then I will thread it on to the bead needle. I'll have everything listed in my description as well. And notice that didn't work. This cording is 1 millimeter. So it is a little thicker. So it took me a second. But once you get it on, I really feel the beads go on pretty quickly. You could also take a lighter and melt the ends. But again, I just prefer this method to attach my beads. Just pull it a little bit. So the first 3 beads I'm going to put on are going to go onto both strands. I like to set it out just to kind of see what color order I want to go in prior to stringing them, and then that one is just not behaving there. And then I just string on. So as you see, it goes nicely. I do have to pull a little bit to get that through, and then just pull it to the bottom. I do that with my second bead, and then I do it with my wooden bead as well. Now, I'm going to take one of the strands out of the bead needle. The last 2 beads, or I'm going to also pull it so they're uneven now. The last 2 beads are going to go on a single strand only. So you see those little bit uneven there, and you'll see why in a second. So you are going to put on your last 2 beads. We go 1, and then you see that string is between, but we'll come back to that. And 2, and then finally we want to add the tassel. So we got our beads on, and then we're going to add our tassel. Typically I don't pick this up, but yeah, you don't have to pull it tight like that. So we go to tassel, and then we will go back through the 2 beads that we just put on there. Usually I go through 1 bead and then the other and pull it, but this time I decided to go through both before I pulled it. The other method was probably a little easier, but that's okay. It works the same. And now take that bead needle off because it's no longer needed. And I'm going to pull those 2 strands so that it's taut. So now it's going to be tight and you won't really see any of that string between. By doing this, you'll also pull that tassel end through that silicone bead. So that will just kind of pop through that. I'm going to push it in just a little bit to help it along. But that's just going to go right inside that silicone bead and be hidden. So you can see I can pull it, and because the silicone beads are have a little give, that will go right inside that silicone bead, and now you won't see that end of the tassel and everything is nice and tight. For this one, I do like a surgeon's knot. So I do the wrapping around twice and I pull it, and then the second knot is just a knot. Oftentimes I will just double knot it as well, and that works just the same. It seems to hold very well. You do see me pulling quite tightly, and this is just to make sure my knot is really secure. I'm going to cut those long ends off, and this is why it makes it nice to have a little bit longer ends. It's just a little bit easier to pull. But I am going to cut those long ends, and then the knot, and then the 2 smaller ends that will be like off that you'll see here. Those I'm going to push inside that wooden bead. So all of that is going to be hidden inside the wooden bead. And because the wooden bead has a wider opening, it is a lot easier to hide it within there. And this is where my glue comes into play. I can push it in with that tip and glue at the same time. And that glue just kind of helps keep it all together. Sorry, I'm off camera here a little bit. Keeps it all together and then keeps those ends from kind of fraying, but just kind of glues it all together. I apologize for being off frame. Here we go. It's a little messy there. And that just kind of goes right inside, and now it's a nice taut keychain ready for decorations, ready for keys. All right, let's get to this wristlet keychain. For this one, I am using 19 beads, so 18 silicone beads and 1 wooden bead. You can play around with what you want. I've seen everything from 17 beads to 20 beads. More if you want to make a large, extra large one, you're going to probably need more beads. And I'm using the 12mm silicone beads here. I'm going to go 2.5 of the width. It's just going to give me a lot of extra string, but then I know that my beads aren't going to fall off. I have enough to tie knots. But you'll get an idea of how much you'll actually need as you go. All right, I'm going to thread it onto the bead needle. Again, I just find this a lot easier to use than trying to string the beads on their own. And they're pretty inexpensive. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with the silicone beads. And what makes this tray nice is that it can kind of keep the beads in place without rolling all over the place, because as you see, there's no knot on the other end. It's just loosely hanging out. So I'm going to add all these beads, and I already have them in my pattern, in my order. Be creative. Use your aesthetic, your colors, you could do every other color. You could do a rainbow. So be really creative with this. It's kind of fun. I love picking out different color combinations and placement of things. So play around with it. It's so fun. So I'm just going to go through and strand all of these on. It's very kind of relaxing to me. I did this kind of late in the night. My son was in bed. My husband was sleeping. So I was able to just kind of come in here, make this video, and then after I made this video I actually made like several more keychains just because it's quick, easy, relaxing. I really enjoy doing it, and it's actually not that difficult, so I don't feel stressed about getting it done or thinking too much about it. So I'm just going to finish off stringing these last few on there, and I'm going to end with that wooden bead. And you'll see why. Again, it's to hide that knot inside the wooden bead, because that's very difficult to do in those silicone beads since their openings are much smaller. All right, so now I'm just going to even this out a little bit so my strands are kind of more equal. Oh, don't forget your keyring. It's very important because once you tie, there's nowhere for the keyring to go. So you want to make sure your keyring is on there before you tie this together. So what I'm going to do again, I'm going to do that surgeon's knot, so wrapping it around twice and pulling tightly. What I find with this, starting with the surgeon's knot style, is that it actually kind of keeps that knot in place. So when I go to do my second knot, nothing really shifts. And so I can really get that very tight around, so that way you can't really see the string in between. Again, this is cording, is not elastic, so there's not really much give, really any give. There's no elasticity to the wristlet. Play around if you rather use elastic or other types of beading elastic. Play around with it. I just find this stays a lot nicer and seems more sturdy. Again, here's me pushing those ends and that knot into the wooden bead and then gluing it as I go. Again, I'll have all this listed so you can kind of see the supplies that I use. Sorry, it's off screen. I just couldn't see. So there is that. Now we're going to add the tassel. Again, you could use a small tassel, a big tassel, a charm. You don't need to use a tassel. This is just an added thing I like to add. So I'm going to add this with that jump ring. I do have like a jump ring type little ring that you can kind of help separate it. So you can see that on my finger. I can easily stick that in there to help that along without having to use my fingers. So I'm just kind of seeing where that placement is. I put it around the ring, and then I just kind of open that, and that I'll link to that ring. That came like a set of 6 or 5. Add that to the ring, and then I just bring it back together. Sorry, again, this is off screen. You can use the ring again to kind of help you along. Kind of just frees up your hands a little bit, which I enjoy. Save my fingers. Apologize that I'm off screen again. Just trying to get that to the point where I want it, where the ends are meeting. And there you have a wristlet. Again, this is using 12 millimeter silicone beads. You can also use the 15 millimeters. I do want to do a disclaimer. These are not meant for baby teething rings. This tutorial is not meant for baby teething rings. I do not know how to make those. And you really need to check with your guidelines, your insurance, and everything on how, what is needed for that. These are not baby-friendly keychain rings. So do not give them to a baby. Do not make them for babies. I am not reliable for any of that. So if you are looking for baby key rings, this is not, or key teething, this is not the tutorial for you. These are strictly for keychains, for keys and keychains. So I just wanted to give that little disclaimer, as I do not know how to make baby teething rings, and I don't know how to make them safely. And you want to make them safely because you don't want to be in any lawsuits. So just really be aware of that while these are for keychain purposes only. All right, so there's some other ones I've made, and I'm just going to show a few photos. Enjoy.